We are now more than 40 days into the new Donald Trump presidential administration, and we know what opponents think because they've been very vocal. But let's take some time to explore how supporters are feeling about the president so far.
Yeah, that's right. John Carlson is with us now, very prominent thought leader in the conservative movement in Washington State, in the Pacific Northwest. You also host a morning radio show over on Conservative Talk Radio, KVI. Let's start with this week, if you could start there. Big speech before joint members of Congress, but a very, very different tone than I think the Donald Trump we saw on Inauguration Day and even on the campaign trail. Are you worried at all? Because supporters loved that candid, off the cuff, and this was very different. Are you worried that he might turn off supporters despite the press and maybe others praising him for this?
You know, Travis, there's an old slogan in politics that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. Okay, when you're president of all the people. You're not trying to get to, 270 electoral votes. You're now responsible for an entire nation. So striking a presidential tone, being a unifier whenever possible, that is always a good sign. And the people really liked what they heard the other night. CBS and CNN, 75% plus liked the speech, even though he didn't change any of his positions, didn't dilute any of his positions. He just adopted the kind of tone that I think serves him really well.
We've talked a lot about the potential Russia connections, both during the campaign itself. We're still talking about it now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things that keep coming out. The Attorney General was even swept into the allegations. How do his supporters feel about those allegations? Do they care? And is this something that they're watching very closely?
I think that Russia's been meddling in elections in this and other countries for years. It's part of what they do. And they clearly were, hacking into the Democratic National Committee, responsible for giving the emails to WikiLeaks. So I think Russia's role in the election should be investigated. Now, the early reports that they hacked the election itself, that they may have helped change vote totals, no evidence for that. But by the way, voting machines aren't hooked up to the internet. So I don't think there's any concern about Russia tilting the U.S. election. But were they still messing around in our election? Yes. And if they were, they should pay a price for that. And by the way, the people around Trump, his defense secretary, his new national security advisor, you got General Kelly there at Homeland Security. These are not guys who are fond of Russia. And so I think that we're going to get to the bottom of it. Congress will make sure. And the Democrats want to put heat on it. That's how democracy works. Let them.
You think, so in general, supporters are supportive of this process kind of playing out then when it comes to...
I am.
Yeah.
Really?
Sure, sure. Look, anytime you have other countries misbehaving in any way in your country, it should be investigated, and it should be bipartisan. I think Jeff Sessions, as Attorney General, recusing himself, which I expect he's going to say he's going to do, is a good sign, because you want these investigations to be by the book and not influenced by politics. Yeah.
Let's change topics and talk about immigration. Mm-hmm. So the rollout of the original, what's called a travel ban, you can use whatever language you want to around it, and then the court fight that sort of has been playing out, Washington State kind of being one of the key members of that. How do you think the conversation about immigration surrounding the Trump administration's moves have been playing with his supporters and with perhaps those Republicans who've now come across and begun to support him, as you mentioned earlier?
Yes, refugee policy and immigration policy.
Two different things, but I think if you talk about immigration in general and border conversation.
Right. My take on refugees is that if people are trying to escape the bombs and the bullets, which is clearly what's going on in Syria and in Iraq and other countries as well, the U.S. should be trying to set aside safe areas in Iraq and Syria with other countries, and making sure these people can stay close to their cultures, their history, their language, their traditions. If people want to come to America and be American, that's a different process. Do I have a problem with a short time out so we can vet our procedures. I don't have a problem with that, but the rollout of the executive orders was clunky and was misfired, and so I think they're going to rewrite these executive orders, and probably in the next couple of days.
How do people feel about the people he's surrounding himself with? A lot has been made about how much he values his daughter's input, his son-in-law's input. How do people feel about that?
I like the people around him. I love our national security team that I just mentioned, a minute ago. I really like the purposeful people that he is bringing into government. These are people who are going to make a difference. The new Commerce Secretary, took a huge pay cut to take the job. You want people who sacrifice to take these jobs, if possible. So there are people who are on board with his agenda. I think his Health and Human Services Secretary, as an example, former Congressman Tom Price is a doctor. One of the few doctors in Congress, became a specialist in healthcare policy. The perfect guy. If you are going to not just repeal but replace the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, do it with people who know how medicine works. So, I like most of the people he's got with him.
As a just sort of style question, and maybe we only have a couple of seconds left here, but opponents have said that, it kind of tried to paint the White House as kind of a mess. That, the travel ban didn't roll out the way it should have, and we've already had the Flynn resignation, and sort of painted this picture. Does that play at all among supporters? I mean, what is the perception when you hear those kind of pictures painted?
I think, the first few months of any new administration, there's bound to be some chaos. There's bound to be some bedlam. People just finding their way. Some of the early appointees may not be a comfortable fit. So, I'm not that surprised so far. I'll tell you who needs to get on the ball is Congress. At this point in the Obama administration, they had already passed the stimulus because Congress had already passed the stimulus bill. It's Congress that needs to get on the ball and get a lot of this stuff passed.
Fantastic. John Carlson.
I wish we could talk to you for another hour. There's so much to unpack here.
I'll come back.
Please do.
Yes.
We would love that.
If you don't get too much hate mail, I'll come back.
We get hate mail either way,
Every
from
day.
all sides. So
We can listen to you 6 to 10, KVI Radio, Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
And we do.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, John.
thank you so much.
Yes, you bet, Casey.